All right, let's do it. Here we go. Welcome to the NFL Deeper Dive, the last one of the season. Shed a tear, pour one out. It's not over yet, but it's been a long, long time coming. Week 20. I'm Dave Lochran, with me, Ben Rasa and Alex Baker, Osimo himself, number one ranked player in the world. Ben, this is it, man. Come to the end of the road.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. But that's not, we'll have, I think I can speak for everyone at the site. We're going to have plenty of Super Bowl content, let me tell you.
No question.
It'll be a little different, but this one, it's been a fun run, down to 2 games. We'll see what we can do with only a limited player pool.
How do you feel about today's slate, Alex?
Man, it definitely feels hard to really pick anyone to get a big advantage on because at this point we all know all the players who are going to be out there. The biggest thing I can think of is just not picking anyone really dumb. So we'll get into maybe the plays where people think they might have a chance, but really there's no chance. But how are you guys thinking about this slate from a broader perspective?
I mean, I'll you know what, Ben, go ahead. Where are you at on this right now? Anything standing out to you from an ownership standpoint that we'll dig into?
So yeah, I think what Alex said is really the struggle I have with 2 games is you want to balance. There's an obvious pool of players that everyone knows should be involved. If you build teams that only are confined to that pool of players, it's almost impossible to differentiate in a large field. If you go outside of that pool, though, you're bringing in guys that are very live to just get zero. And that is really what the chess match in my mind of what we're doing on a 2-game. How risky can you be and try not to get someone who is very live to actually just get no points?
Just to tease it a little bit, is there one or two or multiple? Are there players that, because with only 2 games, ownership is going to be very condensed? Are there some players that you look at and say, you know what, I think they should be way higher owned, or I think they should be way lower owned? Or right now, does it look like the field is pretty much where they should be?
I mean, for me, I think there's nothing too extreme, but you're going to have to make some uncomfortable stands. And more on the flip side, there are some guys that rightfully so aren't going to be too popular, but I do think have some scenarios where maybe they can get involved.
Okay. You boys ready to get into this?
Well, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
All right. Before we do, say hi to our sponsor, fantasydraft.com. If you haven't signed up there yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, because they're the only rake-free daily fantasy sports site in the industry. You know, over time, a DFS player can lose up to 30% of their bankroll due entirely to rake. But we fixed that at Fantasy Draft, because only at Fantasy Draft are 100% of your entry fees paid out to the winners 100% of the time. You know what that means? More money in your pocket or in your account. If you sign up today, fantasydraft.com, and you use the referral code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, you get a 7-day free trial membership, fantasydraft.com. Remember, they're the only rake-free site in the industry. That's it. Everything that pays it, everything the player pays in, gets paid back out to the player. Use the referral code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Get your 7-day free trial membership today. Hop into these NFC and AFC championship games and get some money so you can parlay that into big wins for NBA, maybe the Super Bowl, and whatever else we've got coming down the pike. So AWESEMO is the referral code. Get 7-day free trial membership, fantasydraft.com. All right, fellas, only 2 games here. So we're going to dig as deep as we possibly can. And I think we'll start here with Kansas City and Tennessee. The big thing here that absolutely needs to be talked about, Alex, is the fact that Chris Jones is not expected to play. At least a couple of hours ago, we got a report that the Chiefs are not optimistic about him getting on the field. That is not good when you're missing one of your key defensive tackles or defensive linemen, and you've got a guy opposing you in Derrick Henry, who is running roughshod over every single defense he faces recently. They are 7-point favorites, 51.5-point total. And the Chiefs have a 29.3 implied total, 22.3, for the Tennessee Titans. But how much do you factor that news in? Do you think it's significant knowing that Mike Vrabel and the Titans are obviously going to look to run like crazy no matter what happens early on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that defensive injuries can be pretty significant. not being an expert on the subject, what I usually look for are line movements, and the opening line was minus 7.5. Now it's minus 7. That's all I got. I mean, it makes a little bit of a difference, maybe. I don't want to say that is the whole reason the line would move, but in essence, like the situation is probably about the same. Derrick Henry was already someone that we project to be one of the best fantasy players of the week, and there's so much variance related to his outcome that I don't know if it even really matters that much who's on the field on defense. Just who gets the most points at running back between all those guys.
Sure. And Ben, I'll ask you the same question just because we don't have a lot of significant injuries for today's 2-game slate. This one, just in terms of the Chiefs defense overall, it's not good for them, but how does it influence your decision-making at all, if at all?
It doesn't change much in my decision-making. I will say that I do think, Tennessee's running on a formula of, we know what the end product is. It's to run Henry a lot, but the way he's effective is to wear them down. Right. 3/4 of his yardage are in the second half right now. Having a guy out of that defensive line rotation is important, especially when it's a guy like Chris Jones. So it doesn't help a team that struggles against the run already. Baltimore certainly a more stout front than this. New England as well. They played Henry already gashed this team, 23 carries for $188. Now he's getting 10 more carries usually than that. So we know the volume is going to be there. The question again is, can Tennessee play with the lead? Can Tennessee keep contact, or will the Chiefs punch first and possibly change the script?
Right. And look, it's only one player, but it's a 2-game slate. So we're going to make sure to cover everything, let's actually kick it off with the Titans side of the ball on the road, 7-point dogs. Ben, what are we doing with Derrick Henry here? He's got a rushing prop of 109.5 yards, which is an insane number, right? Like that is a lofty number. And his carries prop is at 22.5. So another heavy expected workload. They have played with the lead in each of their first 2 postseason games, though. So, it's definitely one that could go in a number of directions, where you see Tannehill actually have to throw for more than 100 yards this week in the championship round.
I'm not going to lie, I was a little surprised. I thought the carries in particular were a little light.
Okay.
I'm going to include the Houston game because even though the Texans were resting, for the Titans, that was a must-win game. He had 32 carries in that game. He had 34 against New England, and he had 30 last week against Baltimore. Unless the Chiefs strike first in the sense they're up by 3 touchdowns, I don't understand how Derrick Henry is not going to approach 30 carries in this game. So I think he's going to get the work. We know he's not going to give you much in the passing game. Raw points should be there. Of course, there's an opportunity cost. So I don't have a hot take with him. I have, around 40% right now. I don't think that's going to make a big splash either way.
Okay. With you on the Titan side of the ball, Alex, Derrick Henry, is this and by the way, some of the questions I ask might sound obvious, but it's just an easier way to get the information to our viewers and answer these questions. Is Derrick Henry a staple of all of your lineups today?
I think he's a 50-50 guy. A lot of the guys on the slate are projected for 50% ownership. I believe Henry is around there just because he's so much better than the alternatives at running back. But the thing is, we're quite aware of the fact that Tennessee is not a big favorite in this game. They're the 7-point underdog, so that doesn't necessarily suggest a game script that will set up well for Henry. And the other thing I'm worried about is there's this whole narrative that they're just going to run Henry. That's the game plan. We saw it twice, but over the course of the season, they ran at kind of a comparable rate to maybe let me pull up the exact numbers so I don't say anything wrong, but they ran about 47% of the time. So that was still about half the time that they dropped back and threw. So I think that everyone's focusing on that 50% where they're running. I think maybe the contrarian play is focusing on the other 50%.
Okay. So then what about that other 50%? Ryan Tannehill coming in with a price point of $5,500 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you've got him at $7,700. $1,800 less than Mahomes, $300 less than Rodgers. Whereas on DraftKings, he's $2,200 less than Mahomes, and is still the third highest priced quarterback of only 4. So second lowest priced quarterback as well. But when you take a look at ownership on a slate like this, that's when things kind of come into view, because you've got Ryan Tannehill expected to get a decent amount of ownership at the quarterback position, just using DraftKings right now. Tannehill is expected to get 24%, the same as Garoppolo, while Aaron Rodgers is all the way down there at the bottom. So talk to me about this passing game against the Chiefs pass defense that you got to give them some credit. They have been good this year. Now, that doesn't mean that A.J. Brown isn't a monster and won't be able to put up numbers, but Charvarius Ward is a very good corner. They have been markedly better in pass defense than they have on the ground, where they've ranked as one of the worst teams all season long. What are we doing with Tannehill today and the pass game?
Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of great points about why this isn't like a logical play to go to Tannehill. I mean, the Kansas City pass defense is above average, and they just don't like to pass the ball that much. But one of the guys in the office was telling me, you can't make a lineup that's completely logical, because like so much random stuff happens in sports. So it kind
like the Titans getting to the championship round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think one guy I'm kind of interested in right off the bat is Adam Humphries, because he's been injured. Assuming that he's active, maybe he'll be under the radar for a large amount of people that aren't paying attention. So in the large field GPPs, I think maybe he'll kind of go unowned, where you really need that guy that's low owned to differentiate. And then I mean, Corey Davis is another guy that just never seems to produce, but we know there's always fluky results with these wide receivers, so I might take some shots at him. Of course, A.J. Brown, number one guy. I'll definitely have exposure to him.
Ben, do you expect I don't know if it'll be Rashad Breeland or Ward on Brown. I don't think there'll be any shadow coverage here, but I do think that the matchup is pretty difficult. Now, Alex makes viable points, and I'm 100% with him here. You can't just go with what makes sense on these slates. You have to at least attempt to, it's like you're reading a book and you get to like the last chapter and you say, I'm pretty certain I know how this is going to end, but there's also that possibility, albeit a unlikelihood, that it goes in a totally opposite direction. And as we've seen this season with the Vikings over the Saints, with the Titans over the Patriots, that wasn't that crazy, but still, the Titans beating up on the Ravens, these type of scenarios happen. Or the Texans going up 24-0 in the first quarter over Kansas City. There's been a litany of crazy stuff that we've seen just this postseason alone. So, being able to at least look at a different side of the story, a different ending, a different result, allows us to really analyze it from all sides here.
Yeah, we need those. You remember the Goosebump books where you could choose your ending? Yeah, we need to get into the real sick stuff. But
except I can't choose my ending.
The choose your own adventure Goosebumps weren't canon.
So for me, there's a couple different things. I talked about this last week, and I know Alex and me, we did throughout the year the Thursday showdown. I think of a main slate on one side. I think of a showdown on one side. This is now 2 games. We are teetering very close to just showdown mentality here.
Yeah.
And that is where illogical stuff can work. You use Travis Kelce and Blake Bell. That doesn't even make sense. Can it be effective though? I mean, when you're trying to differentiate, absolutely last week, and you can run your defense against your quarterback and things of that nature. So when I look at a game like this, Derrick Henry, of course, is the focal point of the offense. But then we have guys, A.J. Brown, of course, is an obvious play, but we have guys like Humphries, Tajay Sharp, Corey Davis, some of these secondary Titans pass catchers that may be more involved, especially if they fall behind. The guy that I wanted to throw out there, and I alluded to this earlier, this is where I get into the zero possibility. Dion Lewis, who is firmly behind Derrick Henry. He saw, 15% of snaps last week, was not involved whatsoever. I think it's clear that in a perfect world, he would not be involved again for the Titans. But is there room for him to really have an effective game if Kansas City blows them out in this spot?
I mean, it was literally the exact same analysis that I had and we had last week. Not to, I want to emphasize, this isn't you saying, "Oh, love Dion Lewis today."
No,
right?
no.
Well, there's always. It's more so, could this game take that turn? Could Baltimore, as a 9.5-point favorite last week, have gone up by 3 touchdowns and blew them out? And now Dion Lewis is on the field getting opportunity. Sure. It just happened nothing like that. And he literally was not needed at all. So it's possible. At this point, Ben, I really don't even know how to, I know how to cover all the angles, but man, it's tough to really have any lean on what the Titans are going to do from week to week.
No, I think they have. I mean, we know their formula. We know what they want to do, but the great unknown is what happens if a team is able to slow them. Now, I do think, to speak to the other side of that, and I'm guilty of this too, I think there's too many people that think, oh, well, the Chiefs will just choose to stop the run. Like, they'll stack the box. They could put all 11 in there. It may not make a difference against this guy. Like, I don't think it's just a given you can stop the run if you want to. So we'll see, though, what happens if Mahomes can do things and maybe they can limit him a bit. Then we open ourselves up to seeing Tannehill and some guys that may have not been involved possibly step up and be a little underowned just due to recency bias.
Yeah.
Alex, go ahead. Yeah.
I think that is kind of interesting because there's this element of deception in NFL that's underrated. I mean, clearly, like, they come up with all these complicated plays to throw the other team off. But if you do, like, lean heavily towards run defense, you're opening up the pass defense to holes. And Tennessee in particular has been very effective at the play action plays. So I think that is a possible way that Tannehill gets there.
How willing are you, Alex, and then Ben, probably an important question on such a small slate, to have lineups with like Derrick Henry and maybe AJ Brown or Corey Davis or one of these cheaper pass catchers for the Tennessee Titans? Like, do you see this having any chance of being a game where Tennessee produces both on the ground and through the air? Alex?
I think that it's kind of interesting, like that particular combo, Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. Like, I'd be a little bit hesitant because I know AJ Brown is supposed to be one of the most popular players this week, like simply due to price. So I think it won't be like sneaky at all, and it is kind of a narrow game script that gets you there. Because what you're hoping for is that Tannehill really gets going at the start of the game, and then Derrick Henry then like takes it home. Or I guess it could be a blowout or a shootout as well. But just from a logical perspective, it makes this, to me, it seems like there is an obvious negative correlation between like Tannehill's performance and the receivers, and then Derrick Henry.
Same question to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, Henry is such a polarizing guy that he really doesn't go with anyone in an ideal situation. But on a 2-game slate, I'll put it like this. If I was making 150 today, I would have some Tannehill Henry teams, even though he doesn't really catch the ball, just because they're both prominent members, of course, of this offense. You can do some things and get creative. I agree with Alex, though. I don't think Henry and AJ Brown together is going to do anything in terms of leverage. People are going to do that because they're going to stack the Chiefs, run it back with the 2 obvious Titans. So for me, maybe like throwing in a Jonnu Smith in there, someone a little against the grain, even in the pass catchers, because I don't know how likely it is. Brown is certainly their best pass catcher, but we've seen him not be involved. So I don't think it's a given that he's far and away the obvious guy for the Titans passing attack.
Certainly not. And look, if the ground game continues to be as, or even half as effective as it's been over the last 2 weeks, you're not going to need that. It's just But let's flip it over, Ben, to Kansas City then.
Let me just make one real quick point here.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
So like it's really hard to use weeks 1 and 2 of the playoffs as data points because it's kind of like a parlay. Where if Henry didn't have a good game, they wouldn't be in the playoffs anymore.
Yep.
So the fact that he had a good game, you can't really rely on that because basically whoever gets to the conference finals is going to be like on a hot streak.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not using it as a reference point. I was more so saying that last week, Derrick Henry doing what he did and the game in taking the direction that it did was totally surprising to me. And I have no idea what they're going to do this week. That's all. But Alex, what about Kansas City? Patrick Mahomes certainly going to be the most popular quarterback today, coming in with a ton of ownership here against the Titans. Right now, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs with the highest implied total on the slate at 29.3. They're 7-point favorites, 51.5 total. Again, how are we approaching this passing game starting with Mahomes?
Yeah, this one's interesting because Mahomes by far the highest quarterback likely to succeed in my top stacks. Of the stack being about a 50-50 to be the top stack between the 4 teams. And he's 40% owned, so you get some leverage that way. The problem I have getting here is that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are also top owned players this week. So then it becomes really hard to build a stack that is kind of unique. So I'm kind of conflicted here because it's, one hand it's like by far the most likely thing to work. On the other hand, you're going to be splitting it a lot of ways potentially. So it's hard to reconcile those two elements.
Ben, how about you here?
So, Mahomes is clearly the most likely quarterback to have the big game, to be in the optimal. But I'll say this, I'm using plenty of him, but I am so much more likely to take a guy that is, I'm going to call them, the zero potential players, the guys to get me a potential zero with a Mahomes type stack, because it's going to be so popular and you need to do something radically different. Whereas, if I use one of these other quarterbacks, not that that's automatically going to be unique, but it's on the right path. It's off to a better start. So I totally get looking to the Chiefs, looking to Tyreek, looking to Kelce. And then you have the secondary guys with Sammy and with Hardman and Robinson and those types, which maybe can get you a little more leverage, but the Chief stacks are going to be covered every which way. People love Mahomes today, for rightfully so. We saw last week how dangerous they are. We know this. So that's something to explore. I think for me, I like, I'll get it out there. I like the under in this game. I bet it at 53. It's down to 51.5.
You like the under in every game, by the way.
That's also the point. I do like those unders. But I'm going to have my fair share of it. But when I do, I'm really trying to build really unique and different things around Mahomes, whether it's just different types of Chiefs and Titans, or, different Niners and Packers in that other game, because you're going to need it with such a polarizing, obvious choice at QB.
What's strange to me, Ben, is the fact that you got a guy like Hardman right now coming in with very, very little ownership for such a small slate. Sammy Watkins coming in basically triple the ownership of Hardman. It just seems odd. I know that Sammy Watkins last week had a 48-yarder. Both receptions went for 20 plus yards, but he was targeted only 2 times. He's been targeted more than 4, or he has been targeted. He has more than 4 receptions in one of his last 7 games. He has not been effective. Now he's been on the field a lot, right? And he's running more routes than McCall Hardman, which obviously comes into play. But McCall Hardman pretty much has the same ability to break off, one of his 2 receptions for a 50-yard touchdown. He's cheaper. He's getting a fraction of the ownership. I mean, how much better really is Watkins in a spot like this if we're actually going to use the production we've gotten from him over the last half of the season?
Absolutely. I mean, these are the little things that I think you really need to explore when we have only 2 games. And I'll just throw, look at snap counts from last week. Demarcus Robinson was on the field quite a bit. a lot more than I anticipated that he would be. He saw 4 targets. He didn't materialize them into much.
I think he
But
dropped all of them.
yeah, I mean, it was immediate. That was when I was feeling like a damn genius because it was 24-0. Then they got it in gear, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. Sammy Watkins, there's a name recognition. I think people, if you don't dig in, it's not as clear who is the next guy up besides Tyreek and besides Travis Kelce. And that's one way you can try to explore being a little different.
What are you doing with the pass catchers here, Alex?
Yeah, I think that Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman are kind of interesting ways to mix it up. One of the strategies that I'm finding interesting, we saw this work a couple of weeks ago with the Millionaire Makers. They had the Houston stack with Stills and Fells as their guys, and if you add together some of these smaller pieces, you can get the same production as like a Kelce or a Tyreek Hill or something like that. So I think that is a viable way to build a lineup. Is you kind of take the chalk QB and then you have a stack that's slow armed with him. So I think that's kind of intriguing. It's hard to feel like very optimistic about some of the guys. I mean, Watkins is someone that is much maligned in the public mind. Just seeing all the tweets people are making about how bad he's been since week 1. So maybe he'll be a little bit sneakier than you'd expect this week.
So you think ownership could be changing on him leading up to lock?
Well, I don't want to speculate too much, but I definitely know that he's not someone that's in favor with the community. Like, they might click him just because of his price, but definitely someone that everyone's a little down on.
Gotcha. Okay. What are you doing with the ground game? Alex, Damian Williams last week was on the field for 62 of Kansas City's 64 offensive snaps, which is pretty appealing. But he's not the type of guy that's going to give you 20 carries in a game. At least it's very unlikely. He was targeted 6 times, though. He scored 3 total touchdowns on the day, 2 on the ground, 1 through the air, despite only having 68 total yards. So that clearly buoyed his production and made him more than viable at his price point. He's come up quite a bit in salary. He's still expected to get a ton of ownership, and it's I'd say a better defense, not an unbeatable one, but a better defense. Is he a priority for you today?
Yeah, definitely. I think Damian Williams is a great play. There's a reason why he's so high owned, and I think you called it, is because he was on the field for 90% of the snaps. One thing that just came to my mind when he said that, I'm looking at this box score. He had 12 rushing attempts and 6 targets, as you mentioned. One thing that you might see with running backs is that if the total number of team rushes is low, like one guy will get all the work. But as that number starts climbing to maybe 30 rushes for the team or 40, like if they're really running away with the game, then you might see LaShawn McCoy come on and take some of those. So I don't know if I count on necessarily Damian Williams being on the field as much as he was last week. He's certainly someone that it's a great play. I'm not disputing that. I'm just kind of saying that maybe LaShawn McCoy will get a little bit more action than you might expect based on the box score.
Okay. Ben, what's the word here? Ground attack for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I tried to play LaShawn McCoy last week.
How'd that work out?
It worked out how most things work out in my life. Just, not too good. But listen, Damian Williams, the numbers say it out, but as popular as he's going to be, I'm coming in underweight. I'm hoping for TD regression. He ran pretty pure. Now, this is a guy I'm not saying they don't look to him. He's not going to have opportunities, but he turned, every opportunity he could in the red zone into a touchdown. He had 2 on the ground and 1 through the air. I'm going to look to pivot, particularly with San Francisco running backs. Worth noting, Chad just pointed out, I don't have it confirmed, but a lot of people said it. I believe Chris Jones is active.
Yeah, so we just got Ian Rappaport, excuse me, Ian Rappaport retweeted James Palmer, who said Chris Jones will be active per source. Keep in mind, though, will be active and will play. I'm just throwing this out there. Can be entirely different things. Fortunately, it's not a wide receiver. It's a defensive player. So if he's active and doesn't play, it's not like it changes everything.
Yeah, well, it's not like You remember when we used to have the roster, the independent defense guys when DraftKings had that briefly?
Yeah. I remember they like took away a sack from some guy, and then the guy went from winning $1 million to winning like 15K or something.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that a couple years. Me and Luffy were actually together that Patrick Robinson season, taking it home for me with the Eagles, but that's neither here nor there.
Man.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, they had him, and he had a huge pick against the Vikings for
that
me.
wasn't in every lineup you had to do that.
No,
right?
it was for like, I think it was their first version of like Showdown.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. It wasn't in like every cut. Yeah. How ridiculous was that?
Those were good times. Very disturbing.
Dude, I remember the tilt was so real because Malcolm Butler was the most popular IDP player, and then he didn't even play.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, that was when the Jaguars were fully functional.
That's crazy.
Yeah, listen, I think that it's very easy to argue how Damian Williams being a premier play. I don't see him playing that many snaps, regardless, though he's going to be heavily involved. I just think on this slate, running back to me is where I'm making more dart throws than usual. We have 3 backs in San Francisco that you can look to, 2 in Green Bay, in my opinion, and that's enough for me to be able to pivot a little bit off Williams, maybe with some shady, but I'm so skeptical after what we saw last week.
Okay. And for the both of you here, just a quick take, and then we'll move on to the second and final game. What are we doing with Kelsey? I mean, yes, the obvious answer is play him, but just in terms of the position, like you have Kittle, and then you fall off a cliff to guys like Graham and Jonnu Smith, and I mean, I guess Anthony Ferkser is another guy that people have been talking about, believe it or not. I mean, look, can he get a touchdown on 2 receptions? Yeah, so I get it, but I mean, that's really all you have there. Are you basically just going to be rotating Kelsey and Kittle, Alex, or do you see yourself with a healthy amount of maybe some of these lower 3K, 2K guys?
Well, I think that Kittle is a better play from like a price per dollar standpoint because I have them projected about the same, and Kittle is much cheaper. So I definitely have a preference for Kittle. Of course, what quarterback I pick is going to play a factor in which one of these guys I have in the lineup. It's hard not to like Kelsey a lot though, because I mean, it's one of the best players at tight end, and I mean he has a hot streak coming into this game, which might make him a little bit more popular. But like because you have such limited options, as you pointed out, that doesn't mean you should fade.
How about you, Ben?
I'm with Alex that I prefer Kittle if I'm taking one, but I will say I don't know why this is per se. I have a lot of lineups that actually utilize 2 tight ends on this slate.
Interesting.
Some of it is for salary relief where I take one of Kittle and Kelsey and pair down with the dart throw. And then I have plenty that have Kittle and Kelsey, trying to do my heavy lifting with them, hoping that more people will go elsewhere and I can get a more unique feel with 2 guys that I think everyone would argue are absolutely fantastic. And we know that they both can excel in their games.
You guys want to move on to San Francisco, Green Bay?
Let's do it.
All right. Alex, anything else from this one that we want to get to?
Let's see. Maybe we didn't mention some of the real dart throws. So I guess you mentioned like Ferkser. Michael Pruitt could be someone like if you really want to dig super deep.
Adam Humphries is expected to play, by the way.
Nice.
So, all right. I guess that'll do it for that one. I think we covered pretty much all of it. Hey, by the way, remember you get 50% off any Awesemo Plus weekly package by using the sign-up code, promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive. Get 50% off Awesemo Plus weekly packages. Just use that Deeper Dive at awesemo.com/join at checkout. Deeper Dive is all one word. It'll get you 50% off any Awesemo Plus Platinum subscription for the first week. Ownership projections, player projections, all of our tools, all of our premium articles, the Slack chat, which you should definitely pop into when you sign up and say hi, and so much more. The lineup builder, top stack tool, boomer bust tool, And then there's the Fantasy Cruncher add-on that you can also grab at checkout as well. So use that sign-up code, Deeper Dive, one word, to get you 50% off Awesemo Plus weekly membership over there at awesemo.com/join. All right, fellas, one down, one to go. San Francisco, Green Bay. Ben, let's kick it off here with the San Francisco 49ers. Opened at 7. They're 8-point favorites now, 46-point total. They have a 27-point implied total, 19 for Green Bay. First question I want to ask you before we get into the actual players. Do you think Green Bay's getting enough love here? Do you think this is appropriate with Aaron Rodgers screw it. We'll start with the Packers. With Aaron Rodgers basically getting no love, and it could come down to the fact that outside of Devontae Graham, there are no viable pass catchers. But Green Bay going vastly overlooked today.
They are. The Niners, I think it's a combination. One, they played and it was a demolition. I remember that game, vividly, and it was
bad.
It was
a primetime game.
In overmatched in every facet. I think people saw, of course, what the Niners did last week to Dalvin Cook and Cousins. When this defense is healthy, it is the best defense in the league. They're at home. The pressure they're going to cause to the Packers front line and O-line is immense. Having said that, I do think that, Aaron Rodgers, I don't think it's been a perfect season, but, to me, when he needed it last week, they ended the game. I said this on a show earlier in the week. They ended the game how they should, which is taking knees, not making stops. He when he needed it, he got to Devontae Adams with the perfect throw. He made the play to Jimmy Graham when he needed to. This is a guy that I trust regardless of who's on defense. I expect them to try to get him on the edge. I wouldn't be surprised to see Aaron Rodgers really mobile today and try to get moving to really, take some pressure off this passing game. The problem is what happens if they fall behind and the Niners are really able to rush. That is the one major concern.
I guess I said Devontae Graham.
Yeah, you did. But
well, feel free to correct me on that. I think everyone knows who I'm referring to. When you do basketball and football shows 7 days of the week, it's easy to get that mixed up. Devontae Adams, not the Charlotte Hornets combo guard. But over to you, Alex. What are we doing with Green Bay? And by the way, a point that Ben made, they did get demolished. I don't read into that too much. I mean, the Cowboys slaughtered the Eagles earlier in the season. Eagles came in and shut them down a couple weeks later. Houston slowed the Chiefs down entirely, or at least, by the Chiefs standard, and then allowed 180 points in the playoffs. So crazy things can happen. And one game to me isn't something I'm leaning too much on, but yes, it was a demolition. Anyway, go ahead, Alex.
I think Green Bay, on a per play basis, are probably the ones that you can't feel the most optimistic about this week because San Francisco's passing is so good. But the one thing I like about Green Bay is they also throw. I have them projected to throw as much as Kansas City because Tennessee and San Francisco are both more run-first teams. Green Bay, a pretty balanced team, but because of being underdogs, I project them to throw about 2/3 of the time. And that number of attempts just gives you a little bit more upside, even though on a per-play basis, not as much success. And one guy I'm kind of keying in on is Allen Lazard. I think that he got injured last game and didn't get a catch, I don't think. So I'm hoping people will be a little bit down on him because I feel like he is the second receiver in Green Bay, and he's going to be on the field about like 2/3 of the time. That gives him a pretty good shot.
Okay. It's tough, Ben, because you've got Lazard, who had a rushing attempt last week, no targets. I still think he's viable because, these other cheap guys, there's really nothing there. Jimmy Graham, and I guess you could do worse. When you talk about having dual tight end lineups, does Jimmy Graham factor into that, or are you mostly talking Kelsey and Kittle?
So I do have some interest in the split in the sense you take one of Kelsey and Kittle and you pay down, but Jonnu Smith would be ahead of Jimmy Graham for me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jimmy Graham, it's a tough ask. Came up somewhat large last week, but I don't really see it. I would be much more keen to try to attack. The only thing that the Vikings did good for about 2 seconds early in the game was attack that second corner when Diggs caught that touchdown and walked into the end zone. I think they have to find someone on the outside besides Adams. Lazard, Kumarov, I think, will be inflated because those snap counts, I don't think it's as real as we saw. He almost played 50% last week. It's because Lazard got hurt, in my opinion. So I'm going to look to that. Certainly those guys are more of a priority than Jimmy Graham in my mind, though.
And I know you talked about it a little bit, but I just want to nail this down because you only have 4 quarterbacks going on this slate, barring injury. With Aaron Rodgers right now projected for, no ownership base, 11% on a slate like this, I would say is pretty clear that he's not going to be at all popular. 12% on FanDuel, and then you get him over on Fantasy Draft, you're getting pretty much the same thing. Not much ownership on Aaron Rodgers at all. Well, actually, no, he's let's see, 20, 25, but that's different. Don't you have to play 2 quarterbacks there?
Where?
Fantasy Draft?
Oh, not anymore. I think they used to have that.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, he's a lot more popular on Fantasy Draft, but not anywhere else. Like, is that low ownership enough for you in a good matchup against San Francisco? Because it is still, I know he hasn't been great this year, but it is still Aaron Rodgers. Like, he is still the type of guy that can go out there and sling it and throw 3 touchdowns.
I mean, listen, it's as tough of a matchup as you're going to find.
Sure.
I think there's no doubt in anyone's mind. But on a 2-game slate with Aaron Rodgers as the lowest owned QB possibly, I have interest, yes. I do think, again, and I'm really taking a leap here, that he may get some rushing upside today. I wouldn't be stunned to see, he hasn't done much on the ground this year at all, to see, 5 to 7 attempts. Maybe he can get on the edge and give you some cheap points. And for the Packers to have success, it's not going to be a shootout, I don't think, by any stretch. But Rodgers is going to have to get going. We know Devontae Adams is going to do his part. Aaron Jones, it's a really tough ask. They just shut down Dalvin Cook immediately. So someone's going to have to step on the outside. I definitely have lineups that are like, Rodgers, Lazard, Devontae Adams. I think it's a pretty easy stack. Gives you a ton of flexibility to do what else you want to get done.
So how do you like Aaron Rodgers, the over on a 12.5-yard rushing prop on DraftKings?
I love that. I really do. I think that, especially because it's not like college football where the sacks take away. If this was college, he'd probably finish with -30 rushing yards if they sack him 5 times, but it's not. And I think we're going to see him on the outside a little bit, trying to diffuse this pass rush.
Alex, have you crunched lineups yet?
I haven't really built any, not yet.
Okay. Just curious where you thought you'd be coming in on Rodgers compared to the rest of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think I'll have a good amount. As I mentioned, I have been throwing for as many passing attempts as anyone else, and that'll give him a good shot at success. I think the most likely result, as you can see easily from the Vegas lines, is that the Packers have trouble getting it done. But I mean, with the motto of the show is play everyone, because I mean, it's just like so random. I think I have him as about 15% chance of being the top quarterback of the week. A little bit higher than his ownership, or I mean a little bit lower than his ownership, I think. But I find some advantage in going to Rodgers because everyone is on Devontae Adams with Rodgers, and I feel like the Lazard combo may be something that is underowned.
Okay. The run game here we haven't talked about yet, but it's certainly important. Alex, Aaron Jones has been a monster, especially when it comes to being able to find the end zone. This season, he's got an unbelievable amount of scores. He also has several receiving touchdowns. Last week against Seattle, 2 scores on the ground. Was not efficient, but still got into the end zone twice. That's what makes him special. It's also what can make him kind of volatile in a spot like this where you're facing a good defense. And if you're not getting in the end zone, you're not racking up yards, which is very possible. It's certainly going to hurt you. So looking at the at ownership here, obviously not giving everything away. You can go to awesemo.com/join and get a half off your first week just by using Deeper Dive, like we said earlier. But Aaron Jones, sure, small slate, but he's still going to be pretty popular even up against San Francisco. What says you?
Yeah, I think. I mean, he's probably the second best fantasy quarterback in the slate over the year, second to Henry. So even though the team is a pretty big dog, you gotta feel optimistic about his chances. San Francisco splits it up so many ways that you can't love any particular running back that much. Where Aaron Jones, you're pretty convinced that he'll get a large majority of the work. And then for Kansas City, they don't run quite as much as the other teams, so that's an knock against Damian Williams. So there are definitely some good reasons to pick Aaron Jones, and I think he's a fine play this week.
All right, Ben, backfield for the Packers?
Yeah, Aaron Jones is going to have to be involved. If you think the Niners absolutely mop the floor with them, maybe you just take the Niners defense and have minimal exposure to the Packers. But I don't think that happens, and I'm very comfortable with him. He's going to be forced into 25 touches in my mind, and I'll roll the dice despite the tough matchup. I do want to circle back really quick. LaShawn McCoy is inactive. That doesn't change really anything for me. It would just, if I was going to use him, I'll just use Darwin Thompson. Damian Williams is going to be in for a massive workload anyway.
Yeah, I believe McCoy had played one snap last week, so
it doesn't matter.
I take it for what it's worth. Any interest in the Jamal Williams? Just making sure we cover everything here before we move on.
He's, in my book, similar to kind of what we saw, what I talked about with Dion Lewis. The problem I have is I don't know exactly what game script gives him more opportunities per se, whereas at least with the Titans, if I look at the box score and the Chiefs win 47-10, I think Dion Lewis could have a 5-6 target type game, whereas I don't know what score I'm really shooting for with Jamal Williams getting involved. It's more just, you never are going to predict an injury. It would be he would have to take over Aaron Jones's role for some reason.
Okay. Ben, how about San Francisco? We'll start with the quarterback position, work our way through these pass catchers, and then round it all out with the run game, which at this point is difficult to predict. And I think we'll close the show out with with strategy on how to approach defenses here. Hopefully both of you guys have some insight, but let's kick it off with Jimmy Garoppolo. Right now, he is he's going to be, put it this way, more than twice as much ownership right now as somebody like Aaron Rodgers. And you obviously see why. They're 8-point favorites at home. They have a much higher implied total. And, he does have some upside. It's interesting because when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo performances this year, he's had a lot of really ugly fantasy performances because he hasn't been needed in many instances at all. The ground game dominates, the defense dominates, and there you have it. In 16 games, 12 of them are below 20 fantasy points. He has 120 fantasy point game, and then 3 of them are above 30. So when Jimmy G has a solid game, he has a real solid game, at least from what we've seen this season. But he also has no floor to speak of whatsoever. Really curious to get your take on how to approach a guy like Garoppolo today, who, when the run game again gets going, when the defense gets going, he is unneeded.
That's the problem. I will say to his credit, I'm not a big Jimmy G guy. At times this year, it's been thrust upon him, and more often than not, he's pretty much answered the call.
He has. That's what I'm saying. Like, when he needs to throw, he can get it done.
Yeah, I still think that if you're the Packers, you have to live and die with Jimmy G. If he makes the throws, you're going to lose, but you got to at least try to roll the dice and force him to throw it 25, 30 times, even more, hopefully. I'm not really there. A lot of that becomes Aaron Rodgers at an ownership discount. I have much more interest. If not, I try to just go get Mahomes and differentiate elsewhere. I worry about what you talked about. There are so many ways that the Niners are effective today, and Jimmy G, his sole goal is to not throw interceptions, and that is not what we want when rostering a quarterback. We can live with, a couple Jameis pick sixes if he's going to throw the ball 45 times. That is the opposite of what we see with the Niners attack. So I just don't know how many ways he's forced to throw a bunch today, and that limits the upside.
Yeah, no question. Same question to you, though, Alex. What are you doing with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that if you want to get Jimmy Garoppolo in your lineups, you should definitely pick some Packers players as a game stack, because it's definitely not going to be their go-to strategy to have him throw. And it does seem like Deebo Samuel is getting like a ton of love in the fantasy community. He was one of the highest owned players last week. George Kittle also one of the highest owned players this week. So that leaves maybe Emmanuel Sanders. Kendrick Bourne is someone that doesn't get a ton of targets, and he caught a touchdown, so I feel like he's going to be overowned. So it's hard to find anyone to really love from the receiving core, aside from Kyle Juszczyk. But yeah, I don't really see him being more in like a contrarian play this week.
Okay. What about the pass catchers with Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Emmanuel Sanders? I know you mentioned a bunch of them, Alex, but if you had to, if you're saying, I'm not rolling with much Jimmy G, Kittle's definitely your top pass catching weapon here, right?
Yeah, I mean Kittle, you gotta love from every respect. First of all, he's really cheap, to a point where it just doesn't make sense based on his season production. So he's going to be a core play. And if you have him, I mean, picking Garoppolo makes more sense for sure. I do think Deebo Samuel and Kendrick Bourne are going to be a little bit overhyped because of recent successes. So Emmanuel Sanders, I feel like, is someone that gets about as many targets as Deebo Samuel, and he's kind of less beloved in the community. So maybe you can get an edge just going to him over Samuel.
Okay, Ben, wide receiver core and tight end here. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, with the lack of interest in Jimmy G, I don't have too many lineups where I like load up on the Niners, but there are pieces. Kittle's certainly my priority. As Alex said, a lot to like. Coming off a game where he was really not needed, I think I don't want to say it's going to depress the ownership. He's still going to be very popular, but it can't hurt because I don't worry about him at all. And then you have the pass catchers, but to me, the slate, one of the main keys of this is, can you get the San Francisco running backs correct? Last week, Tevin Coleman was not talked about by many. Ended up, they ride the hot hand, and look what happened. This week, it's now reversed. He's the most expensive. We have guys like Mostert. We have guys like Breida who they're going to have opportunities. They certainly have a narrower path, but I'm not shying away from that. And in fact, I'm embracing that on a lot of my teams.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing has changed a lot. Raheem Mostert is going to have ownership because I think most people aren't blind to the situation that, as you just mentioned, this was a hot hand thing, and it could go many ways, many different ways today. Could it be a situation where Breida gets off to a start and actually ends up getting 15 touches? Probably. I think your best play based on salary though for this team, probably Mostert, just because there isn't really much clarification on who's going to get the ball and who's going to see the most carries today.
Agree on all fronts. I think Breida is live to have around 10 touches. If he really gets going, he could find the touchdowns. He could find the big plays. Tevin Coleman coming off that game is going to have probably first crack at some things, but you can roll the dice. Mostert, I certainly have plenty. And I will say this, one of my weirder combination, I have a couple teams that have Mostert and Breida together. You're talking about 7,700 total on DraftKings. Say they run the ball 45 times. Now, Tevin Coleman, of course, could play a major part of that, but I do think there are weird combos like that you can explore. I want to be clear, that is as aggressive as you can get, and it's very different. But for the salary, I did make some teams like that and hope that San Francisco just runs them into the ground.
Well, between Mostert, Coleman, and Breida last week, they had 42 running back carries.
That's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of scenarios, and we see that speaks to the detriment at Jimmy G. He only threw the ball 19 times last week.
Alex, the run game here, it's a mess, but it kind of isn't, because if they get out to an early lead, then it's very likely that they just run the ball as heavily as they did last week. Look, Vegas says that it should take this course, but I mean, in all seriousness, who knows at this point? That's the likely route, and if it happens, all of these guys should probably get a decent amount of work. What are you doing with the backfield here in San Francisco?
Yeah, I think I like Ben's strategy of maybe stacking them up in some lineups, because we see every single week they just give several guys a lot of work, and that's a lot different than any other team on the slate. So I think who's the better pick between Mostert and Coleman? I mean, I have them projected about the same. Mostert maybe a little bit higher, and he's cheaper, so like he's a better DFS play. But I think ownership will reflect that. The one guy that I'm higher on than the field, I think, is Breida. I feel like everyone's putting him in this category with Jamal Williams and Dion Lewis, these guys who are real backups. Those guys, I think, are barely going to see the field. Whereas Breida, I think, is going to actually get like significant touches and perhaps be even a part of the game plan to use him as a weapon. Like unlike the other guys who are just kind of third down or like spelling the main running back. So I think there's a lot of potential in Breida to fly under the radar here.
Okay. So it's really not a crazy idea yet to have two running backs from this team. If they do, start routing even if they don't, even if this game's close, it's still very possible that the run game is dominant. Let's take a couple minutes here before we close it out. Well, I'll ask you guys this. Feel free to just jump in. Is there anything from either of these teams on offense, not defense, that we're going to talk about now that we haven't touched on that we should probably get to before we close it out?
Not for me, no.
No? Alex?
I was just kidding about Juszczyk. I probably won't have him.
Okay. Yeah, I was hoping that. I figured as much. I figured the laugh. So all right, let's close it out with a little bit of strategy discussion. Ben, I'll go to you, and then Alex, you can take us out. Right now, ownership on defense is never going to be crazy spread out, but the Niners, I'm not telling any secrets here, are going to be very popular defense at their price. The Chiefs, Packers, Titans. Is there any specific strategy that you find important to discuss right now? Whether it be, hey, I'm willing to play this many guys against this defense, or I like this defense even though, they're playing a difficult or a really good offense. What are you doing here? Because you know as much as I do, Ben, and then I'll shut up. As much as I hate it, defense can determine whether you win $1 million or $5 million.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the obvious thing is you have to let your other positions dictate it to an extent. If you have a scenario where you think the Niners run it down their throat and they dominate the game, certainly the Niners defense is going to probably be towards the top and the Packers defense would be last, because how often are you getting crazy turnovers with that game script?
Right.
On the flip side, I do think there are narratives where you can use defenses against your own quarterback in a situation like this and hope that maybe there are some turnovers, particularly with the Niners and Rodgers. They could get after him. They could cause some big plays and force him to keep throwing late in the game. The other side, listen, I mean, the Chiefs defense, they're at home in Arrowhead. They've been stronger late in the year. I get that. I'd expect them to be the second most popular defense. Then you have the Titans, who are clearly in the worst matchup, but they make you have more salary. So for me, I feel fine. I have exposure to all four of these defenses, and it's really just lineup by lineup, trying to see what I need, whether it's safety with the Niners or salary with a team like the Titans.
Okay. How about you, Alex?
The factor I'm really considering here is leverage, because I don't think one defense really stands out as a great play. Tannehill and Rodgers don't really throw a ton of picks, which is kind of limiting me from loving the Chiefs and 49ers here. But I see that, first of all, Garoppolo throws picks at a higher rate than any of the other quarterbacks, so that would be a reason to maybe go to the Packers. They're the third highest owned defense. Fourth highest owned is the Titans, and I like them because you can get a lot of leverage over people that have stacked up Mahomes. I mean, there's going to be a lot of Chiefs in most every lineup here. And I feel like if you play the contrarian angle that the defense is better than expected today, maybe you eliminate a lot of the field if it works.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us, fellas. It's been fun. We will be back, like Ben said, plenty of Super Bowl content, but that's not for a little while now. This is the last non-showdown slate that we have for the season. Hey, Ben, want to take us out?
Sure. It's been a fun season. Honestly, chat, each and every week you guys stick with us. We really do appreciate it. If you can hit that like button on the way out, it means a ton. But for me, Osimo and Lofty, it's been great. Good luck, everyone. Stay tuned. Inactives and Live Before Lock taking you home, and we will be back with some Super Bowl content in a few.
All right. Good luck tonight.
All right. Is it me? Is it live? Is it Memorex? Does anybody even know that anymore? This is the NFL Live Before Lock here. It's your old pal Emac along with Nolan Kelly. We are taking you down the home stretch here up to lock. It is a 3:05 kickoff today for the NFL. We have a 3:05 game, and then what is it? I think 6:30 game for NBA that tips off at 3 o'clock. And then we have, I believe it's a 8 o'clock tip off there for the evening game. So just a couple slates from that standpoint. Let me get some light on in here. I forgot to do that. But we've got some exciting stuff. There's some huge prize pools out there. I've got a bunch of entries. I'm making my last lineups here. I've got my tiers contest in. I've got my NBA all set. I'm just now tweaking my player pool overall, Nolan, for the 2-game slate. And then I've got my rules set up for what I want to do with Showdown for the first game. So I will make those as well as we're on air. But I think I'm in a good spot here. It's been
nice.
It's been a busy morning doing covering for Josh and doing other stuff.
No doubt. I just had to Google Memorex tapes and look at them, and like, man, that brought some memories flooding back, man. late 1980s.
It was a long time ago. But right. Yeah. So what do you want to do? Should we? The earlier show went in depth on everything.
It's a great show. Yeah. We can just kind of go through and break these games down, talk a little bit about the Osimo ownership projections as well. Maybe we can touch on the Showdown slate. I know you've got an article out on the site right now to talk about that. And we can talk about the Osimo top, the ownership versus captain odds as well is always a good discussion point for the Showdown slate. really just it's winding up pretty quick here. So gonna have to get some showdown action in once all the lineup, if the lineups bust early, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm drinking a Diet Pepsi. I haven't had a Diet Pepsi on air in over 2 months now.
Wow.
I kind of stopped drinking soda for a while, but I'm back, baby. I'm back.
You just gotta kick back and enjoy it on days like this, man.
Yes, there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts here. Oh, and we have hockey at 5:00. There's a three gamer that I've got my lineups in for as well. So I'm all set. Tomorrow, nice. As we're waiting for a few more people to collect here, we have, of course, the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and the NBA has embraced that, and they have 2 or 3 games going off between 2 and 3. They have 6 games going off at 5, and then they have a 5-game slate beginning at 7:30 as our usual main slate. So we are going to have not 1 but 2 NBA Live before lock shows tomorrow. You'll get the DFS NBA strategy show at the usual time, and of course there will be the deeper dive with Adam and Laffy. So we're going to have 4 shows for the 2 big slates, and then there'll be kind of a smaller 2:00 slate. So it should be a lot of fun tomorrow. For those of you, some people have to work. I get to work remote tomorrow, so but I'll still be working, but it'll be fun.
Nice.
Let's do it. Fire away. Ask me some questions. I'm going to balance the old portfolio here. So here's nice. The first one. And so I know you're a 49ers fan, and I just want to point out to everybody that you are wearing an Aaron Rodgers college sweatshirt here. So we saw this matchup in week 12. It was a Sunday night football game. We're going to start off with the late slate first, but not to fear. We'll hit that earlier one as well. But so we've seen this matchup. It was a rout. It was I think it was 37-8, something along those lines. With the 49ers, they ran the ball darn near as much as they could, and did not really need to do a lot of passing. Hey, that's the same thing they did last week. There were 18 targets on 19 attempts. I'm assuming there must have been a spike in there somewhere for the 49ers. The 3 receivers got targets, and Kittle. Not a single target went to the running backs. There was kind of a shifting in running backs. Raheem Mostert had an illness, caused some cramping, and he was having an okay game, but he gave way to Tevin Coleman, who had a phenomenal game. We've seen Coleman's price jump up. Mostert's in my main lineup just because I needed the salary savings. But truthfully, I don't think he might have had more than one game this season where he had more than 14 touches. So he doesn't, even when he's the main guy, he doesn't get a lot of action. And lo and behold, Matt Breida, always lurking there. So any one of these 3 guys could be in the mix. On the other side, sneaky option here with Jamal Williams, who hasn't seen much action, but did get a lot of work out of the backfield as a receiver in week 12 in this same matchup. And then Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer, he's a game manager right now. What the hell's going on? He had 1 more touchdown, or one, I forget it was 1 more or 1 less than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
What
gives?
Crazy.
He hasn't really been the same. I think a lot of the analytics guys have been talking about this for the last 3 years, that he's really hasn't been an elite quarterback. Of course, he's still good quarterback. You can't really knock him. It's like you're judging him against his previous performance when he was one of the best in the game, and he hasn't been at that level in a while. But that's not to say he can't get it back at any time. I echo all of your statements on the 49ers running game. You could kind of go with all 3 of these guys. I know Osmo really likes Matt Breida, and I'm in the same boat here, partly because of the ownership. We're looking at sub 5% ownership for Matt Breida this week, which is really enticing at his price point, considering it's not like he's a backup that's not going to see touches. Like, we're going to see probably 6 to 9 touches for him this week. That's been his normal rate, or his normal usage for the past few weeks. And of course, with this 49ers backfield, it's a little bit unpredictable. We saw last week a very almost bare min price Tevin Coleman go absolutely ham. And, it just might be a case of someone getting a hot hand, and Breida's a spark standout, one of the best athletes at running back in the game, along with a couple of the other guys on this team. But he can absolutely just break one off. So I do like that as a contrarian play. And then Jamal Williams, he's just kind of been phased out of this offense. But Ben Rossa said on the last show, it's like he's not, he's another option at a low price point that could see work, could be game script dependent, could just sort of they could just sort of return to like this split timeshare that we saw earlier in the season. So I think at lower ownership, he's also worth a flyer in some of these contests at that price point.
Yeah, it's just it's been nuts here, absolutely nuts. With these are two less than thrilling games. Let me rephrase that. From a fantasy standpoint, these are going to be great games to watch.
I hope so.
You know, and it's past brunch, so we can't go out to brunch instead of watching the games. So we'll be watching the games. Joke from last year's DFS Twitter. But a few other highlights I wanted to hit into this. So we had a lot of fun with the, you know, hometown. Aaron Rodgers, you know, grew up in the Bay Area, went to college at University of Cal, Golden Bear. In the last appearance here, he was 20 of 33 for 104 yards. Not very exciting. He did have a touchdown. Aaron Jones last week had 2 touchdowns, 21 carries, 61 yards, and caught 1 of 2 targets. Jamal Williams had 1 carry, 1 target that he caught. But good looking back again, week 12, Jones had 13 carries for 38 yards, no catches. He had 1 target, and that was when Williams was active in the game, or in the game plan, and that was back when we were seeing a lot more split backfield work. But he was 11 for 45, 7 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. So we like trying to look at what happened to week 12 and then the 6 weeks or 6 games they've had since then. It's hard to say what's going to happen here. The one thing I do know for sure, Davante Adams core play today.
Yeah, I like that call too. Like we're not getting a lot of Davante Adams in our projections, but the thing is, like when you look at the way the 49ers line up, it's Richard Sherman pretty predominantly on the left side, 90% of his snaps on the left side, and then you know that right side they've really struggled to get a starting cornerback there. We've seen Akila Witherspoon just actually get benched last week, and Mosley came in and was a little bit better. So I would imagine that the Packers are going to try and get him away from Richard Sherman, try to get him running more routes on the right side. And you know that's a plus matchup and a winnable matchup. And with Alan Lazard nursing an ankle injury and not really a lot of other options in this offense, you would have to expect him to get a huge target share. I think he's priced up, but he's a safe play, I think, given his target share in this offense.
Now you know the defensive players, of course, much better than I do with the various content you're doing for NFL. They did mention on the earlier show, as we transition to the first game here, the Kansas City side, they're missing one of their important defensive tackles.
And yeah, I think that's overblown. And like so, Chris Jones. I pulled up a stat on. Let me just pull this up real quick. But he's ranked 11th on PFF in their defensive tackle run stuffing grade on the Chiefs. So like he's not even really all that big of a I don't know. At least he hasn't performed at that elite rate. So I wouldn't really say it's a huge issue. And like the thing you want to do with this stuff is just make sure you're watching the line movement, right? And if the line's moving a lot, then you know it's probably going to open things up a little bit. Probably going to make Derrick Henry a little bit more viable. But the line hasn't really moved, and I don't think it's that big of a factor. But you know, I mean, it's a pretty darn good matchup for Derrick Henry already. So any weakness to that defense is going to just make it even better. So.
Yep. So I'm looking at our ownership and I don't want to upset the apple cart here with what I've got going on in my fantasy cruncher and my portfolio. So I'm not going to upload a new one here, but I do want to say not a lot is really going to change from our ownership from when I brought this in just before our show started. So looking at our key players here, we have Mahomes at 41%. I'm trying to get half my lineups with Mahomes. Very chalky play, but he is the most dynamic guy out there. Derrick Henry, we have at 57%. I'm trying to get over that. I'd love to get closer to 70. I'm at 63, so I'm okay with that. Travis Kelce, I'm coming in about where the field is. I'm coming in at 60, and the field is going to be around 55%. I think that's a function of people wanting to pair him with Mahomes. I am coming in at 54% on Tyreek Hill. We have it at 43%, so I'm a little above that. But the guy I'm trying to force back in here is Davante Adams. I would like to have him on half my lineups, but that means I'm getting a lot of scrubs in here. But I've got we've got him at about 35%. I'm just shy of 50%. So some of the guys I'm coming in low on would be AJ Brown. The field is at 45%. I'm at 10%. So I'm trying to reverse leverage there. Emmanuel Sanders, I need a little salary savings. I'm coming in at 25 for him, 44 for Debo. The field's at about 30 on both those guys. I like Debo more. Granted, he is the rookie, but he was second on the team in targets, receptions, and yardage to George Kittle. He also had 14 carries in the regular season for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a nice little wrinkle there because we're trying to go one for the showdown slate tonight as well as for today, though. Every touch is just going to be magnified in games where we're seeing 3 of the 4 teams playing today would rather run the ball than anything else.
True. AJ Brown's a tough one because like the price point is so low across the industry. He's had 2 games where he hasn't done anything. I think he has the Titans have completed 15 passes in their last 2 games or something. It's just obscene. Ryan Tannehill has only thrown the ball less than 30 times. So, and then of course the strength of this Chiefs defense is their secondary. Travarius Ward's put together a pretty respectable season thus far. He's allowing 1/4 of a point per snap to opposing wideouts, 7th fewest fantasy points per target. He's probably going to see the most of AJ Brown this week. And of course, we know what the game script's going to look like here from the Titans. It's going to have to be Derrick Henry heavy workload, and you're playing to the weakness of the KC defense. So the only way to get, Brown, I think he's a good play just because of the price, but there's definitely some red flags there. So I certainly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, this will be it's going to be interesting. So I've kind of done a shotgun approach. I'm not really happy with I probably should have played less this week. No, my volume's way down, but I went down in buy-ins a fair amount just because I wanted to try a bunch of different things this week because I didn't have a great feel on everything. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out. But I probably should have focused more on the showdowns because it feels like this slate is like 2 showdowns mushed together, which is not always fun. But when we get to this point in the year, there's just been content all week focusing on, the 4 teams. So it's like every little nook and cranny has been discovered. Everything's been, every stone has been turned over, et cetera, fill in your platitudes here. But I'm curious to see how it all plays out. This is why we have the games. Now, I was traveling last week, so I didn't get to watch much of it. I tried to watch the last part of my Seahawks, but they lost. Time ran out on them. But today I should be watching most of these games. And then I think any of the 4 teams that are still playing today has a shot at winning the Super Bowl. Not that that's a hot take or anything, but I really think the way everybody is designed, we all say Kansas City could be more. Would it be a shock if somehow Kansas City lost today? No. It looked like they were on the ropes last week until they went,
That was a weird game though. Like I as soon as they went down 24-0, I was trying to get some money line action there, but it only got up to plus 205. But like that was such a weird sequence of events to bring them down that far. Like I'm on the favorites today. I think that you might be right. Like Tennessee's obviously exceeded expectations, but this Kansas City team is so explosive and been kind of like flying under people's radars as everyone got excited about the Ravens this year. So we'll see. I like the favorites, but there's narratives, right? I think though that like whoever comes out of this, if it's KC or San Fran versus one of these other teams, it's going to be, you're looking at least a 7-point spread heading into the Super Bowl.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Oh, I just had to make a couple Belldozer teams. Why not?
Nice.
You got any lucky last time?
They talked a little bit about it on the previous show. What's your, do you have, because lineup construction is really important on these slates and it's really hard to differentiate when we already know who the players are. You got any low owned flyers that you're pushing in your larger GPPs?
Let me see who is. I'm half the field on the 49ers defense.
That's another interesting point that Alex brought up on the previous show, that like Tennessee might be the best defensive play in a vacuum here, not because they're a good play, but just because they're so low owned. It's either them or the Packers, right? Price is low, 15% ownership, 15, somewhere between 10 and 20, depending on your site. And they're not going to be owned in Chief stacks because people are will set the parameters for their lineups or not want to play them against the Chiefs. So if you're bringing back a Chief stack with the Titans D on a small slate like this, it's a great way to find some differentiation in your lineups. And of course, anything can happen on these slates. You get a pick 6 or something, all of a sudden the Titans D is the play of the day, despite the fact that the Chiefs still might put up 30, 35 points on them.
Yeah, it makes it hard. It's funny. I'm looking. Our Twitter account is quoting me and sending these out as part of
They're on top of it.
Yeah, I gotta be careful. I make sure, not that I wouldn't be, but I make sure that there are no throwaway statements here, because these things are very, very important. The internet never forgets.
Sure.
Here, so all right, I'm gonna enter my last couple contests, and then I've got my file ready to upload. So this will be kind of fun for the main slate. So basically, with regards to the defense, I'm between 22 and 28% on the 4 of them. So I've got what I feel is a nice little mixture, and that's where I'm going. So if you're setting rules, etc., I said you can play 3 guys against their own defense, and I also said I can go up to 35% on any one of them, because that is one of you never know what's going to happen. Any defense can get a return touchdown at any time, and that just could. I mean, block punt led the scoring off there for Houston last week. So it's just one of those oddities that you want to be careful that you don't really go all in on something. And I feel that I get a little more wiggle room today by going with a mixture there and just allowing a bunch of players to go against their own defense. That is where I'm hoping, as needed, I'll get some of this differentiation in these tournaments. I'm doing a bunch of the I'm playing on DK today, so I'm doing a bunch of the boosters and such. So that's very important to me, to have differentiation and try to get some volatility. Over on Fantasy Draft, of course, rake-free Fantasy Draft, which is very, very fun. I did not get in there today because I knew I was going to be on air and producing a bunch of NBA content. So I'm only doing the one site, but very similar pricing here to what I've done on DraftKings. So if I were playing there, I would take the same approach with defense. I would kind of put, just go 1 and 4 basically with what I'm doing, set it so there's a little wiggle room to get your differentiation. I am over the field on Adam Humphries. That would carry over there. Under the field on AJ Brown. Brown's been phenomenal, and I think he's been okay in the playoffs. Or just as you mentioned, there hasn't been the volume. I mean, they haven't thrown 30 times or so in the 2 games. They may have to go to the air, and if they are, I would think it would be Brown that has the best chance here. I don't have as much Jonnu Smith as I thought I would. I know that a few of our guys have talked about him being a potential leverage play. I think that could be a hole in what I'm doing here. I want to look and see where I'm at. I've actually matched the field. We're both in the mid-20s. So I'm not taking a stand there. I do have 70% of George Kittle. I'm taking advantage of the lower price, which I would recommend doing on Fantasy Draft there. And if I were playing more on Fantasy Draft today, because of the rake free, I would focus more on single entry double ups and some triple ups, and then sprinkle in a few contests here and there. I would try to say, okay, I want to play against people that I hope they make the mistakes, and I just need to beat a handful of people to maybe double or triple my buy-in. When you play in the large contests, if you minimum cash, you're going to have to beat 80% of the field, and you get between half or double your buy-in back. So I like to play on these the showdowns where there's less games and less people in the player pool. I like to play the smaller contests because I just feel it's a better way to go. So there's thoughts on that. Plus rake free, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I got a couple tidbits I want to throw at you. All right. What about, this used to be on vogue in DFS circles a few years back, pairing up the defense with the kick returner, punt returner. What about Mecole Hardman today? 10% ownership, not getting a lot of run on offense, but does return both punts and kicks for the Kansas City Chiefs. Will you be in favor of a little double dip action there? He's going way over owned in my opinion, but if I'm going to have Mecole Hardman, I'm probably going to pair him with the Chiefs D.
All right, just for you, I'm going to make a couple lineups just like that, because I do not have him on a single lineup
I don't. I just force him into a couple. He's
Yeah.
probably a terrible play, but at the same time, like he's the kind of guy who could break one off. So that's not a bad option.
I don't feel that how many players, so that the whole double dip thing was better.
It never happens. Yeah. But
it
on
was better when
slate,
it was like real players playing. Now that we have so many, not that they're not real players, but we have so many specialists now. Kick returns don't happen as much. Especially the last 2 years, they've changed the rules so they in fact won't have the chance. They never want to show the all 22 of the kickoffs, and it's one of the most violent plays in the NFL because you have all these guys running absolutely at full speed. So they've changed where they kick from. They've changed the rules of how, if you take the touchback, how many yards you get. If it goes out of bounds, there's still those issues, et cetera. The NFL would love to do away with the kickoff. I just don't think they're going to. But look at what they did with the onside kick rules. I mean, they're trying to, for player safety as much as they can. There's not as many returns now as there used to be. And it's not the, wide receiver one that's going back there because it's the playoffs and they're going to do it. Return the kicks because they want their best guys to be, like Chris Carter returning punts or whatever it might be. They don't do that nearly as much in the NFL anymore. So even like Tyler Lockett, phenomenal kick returner. Once he became the wide receiver one, they don't let him back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm bringing up my Seahawks every chance I can get.
Yeah, that's fair. Fair points. Anybody else down here you like? Mecole Hardman, we already mentioned. Demarcus Robinson had a bunch of huge drops last week. He is about 11% owned.
He's in my main lineup. I needed the salary relief. The only reason he's in my
lineup. He's a decent flyer, and we've seen before that he can. He's certainly capable of having those breakout games. Though clearly the third dog at wide receiver on the Chiefs right now. Tajay Sharp, I think my personal favorite is Adam Humphries. Same with Osmo. He really likes this play. Really good matchup against Kendall Fuller in the slot, who's one of the worst corners on this slate this year. The only question is whether or not he's going to be a full go. If you think that he's going to get re-injured, Tajay Sharp makes for a nice flyer, though his ownership hasn't come down, and Adam Humphries is just 17%. I would expect Humphries to get the start and get the majority of the snaps there, near the bare min on almost every site. I'm double the field on Adam Humphries today, about 30%. And the only issue I have with him is that the upside is pretty limited there. We haven't really seen any ceiling games from him. He's more of a safe play, but of course on a 2-game slate, maybe you just need, those 4 catches for 55 yards and you hope he gets into the end zone because you will be winning some money if he does that and you have him in your lineup.
How much Breida did you end up with, or is that more of a showdown slate play for you?
No, I've got Breida for sure. Yeah, let me take a look. I ended up with 11%, so not that much, but about twice the field. Just probably the best punt running back other than Jamal Williams today. And then the other guy I think that we could get to, or you could get to in a few lineups, which will be heavily game script dependent, is Dion Lewis. I think you stack him up in Chiefs blowouts if you have, say, Pat Mahomes, Damian Williams, 2 or 3 receivers, and then you bring it back with the Dion Lewis, because at that point, they're probably going to have to spend the entire second half passing the football. You're not going to see a lot of Derrick Henry running if that game script does play out. And of course, Dion Lewis is much more likely to see the field in that game script. So he's another guy getting about 5% ownership on this slate that I have no problem sprinkling in to a couple lineups, though it's probably a suboptimal play.
I have 5% Breida. That's about where the field is. So just stating the facts.
Yeah.
I'm playing a fair amount of the tiers contest. I do like those. I wish more sites would go that route. They've been a lot of fun.
And the competition's a lot softer, so it's a lot easier. You just have to kind of go for highly projected, but kind of correlate, but also find some differentiation as well.
Yes, that's one thing you can do. As you mentioned, the correlation. So you have the opportunity. So they don't have Mahomes on the contest, which makes a lot of sense. But you can come in here and get guys. Let me just make sure I'm not copying in a bunch of the same lineup. You can get guys like Rodgers and Devontae Adams. You can get Garoppolo and Debo. You can get it's interesting how it works. And I like the fact that they don't have Mahomes on this, because he would just be the one where everybody would want to go. And by keeping him off, they're allowing us to have some choices that we have to make, which I think is really a good way to do it. So Derrick Henry will be the most popular because he's one of the main guys there in what they call tier 1. But I think there's some choices here that we can make. And you get down to tiers 5 and 6. Well, actually 4, 5, 6, you're looking at guys like Sammy Watkins, Johnny Smith, Corey Davis, Geronimo Allison, Demarcus Robinson, guys that would really never grace your lineups, or definitely be last guy in if you were playing on the salary cap slate. But for example, here I've got a lineup that has Lazard, Mecole Hardman, and Geronimo Allison with Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to throw for 4 touchdowns? I doubt it, but if he does, I'm going to be smiling.
Absolutely.
All right, let me upload that. Okay, I've got everything in except for my early slate, and I've got a few people pinging me in Slack, so I want to talk showdown for the early slate here.
Sure. Let me get one more real super low on flyer for you. Khalif Raymond, Tennessee Titans, runs a 4.38 40 out of Holy Cross. Gets about one target. He can
get
per
a wheel
game.
Route touchdown. Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying, if anyone on this Tennessee team is getting behind the defense and scoring a touchdown at 0.2% ownership, it's probably him. So I don't hate it.
Let me see. I do not. Let's see. Blasingame is not on any lineups, and Khalif Raymond not on any lineups. Now that is my salary cap. Now I'm moving over to showdown. So we will see if they make the lineups here. But that's an interesting take. So let's see. Yeah, we don't have them with enough points to get into our lineups. But that means a lot of optimizers won't. So that's where you want to manually change a few of these and work more on your so I set up rules here. So let me quickly go over my rules. So I set up a Mahomes. I need to play him with 2 of his pass catchers if he's the captain. Tannehill, I need to play him with 1. And I've included running backs in this because I don't know who Tannehill's at, how many he's actually going to throw. So I'm going to come in with very little Tannehill as a captain is my guess. I've put 2 groups together. One I'm calling the Tennessee Scrubs. One I'm calling the KC Scrubs. Playing one of guys that are not their main skill position players, which for Tennessee, damn near all of them ended up in that bucket except for AJ Henry, and that actually might be it. Everybody else, I said I only want to play one of them because how many touchdowns are they going to get? I set a rule that said I can have no more than 2 of defense and kickers. That includes them as being the captain. So I could have a captain, defense, and a kicker. I could have a kicker, 2 kickers. I could have 2 defenses, etc. But I can't have more than 2. And then I said, all right, what pass catchers do I want to have their quarterback with? Right now it's Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think that the Tennessee guys could have an okay game with 1 touchdown because that's all that there's going to be from Tannehill, and Tannehill may have 110 yards and a touchdown. So why would I want to submarine that lineup by having him on it? So I said no rules for the Tennessee pass catchers. Or you might be muted there. No. Can you hear me? It's a better way of saying it. So we may need Nolan to pop in or out there. Let me go look here at the chat and see. I'm assuming they can hear me still. Do you want to try going in and out of the room there? All right. So in any event here, we'll see what Nolan can get going here with that. So I'm going to go look at some questions here. If Tannehill has to throw to win, the Titans will get blown out. I think that's a fair statement there. If we go back and look at Tannehill, he's been incredibly efficient throughout the entire season, with the key thing there being for him is let me step back and say it in better words. I think he had 10 or 11 starts this season. He had multiple touchdowns, I believe, in all of them, but the yardage wasn't really necessarily there supporting it. So it makes it a little bit tougher to count on him because we're not seeing that level of passing yards. What we're also not seeing it with is Jimmy Garoppolo, who had about 250 yards per game passing, which was right in the middle. And that's the same number that Aaron Rodgers had. They were both between 248 and 250 per game during the regular season. The interesting thing, both those guys had about the same number of touchdowns. They were one apart. Garoppolo ended up being 5th overall in touchdowns during the regular season, and Rodgers ended up being 8th because there was a couple guys tied at 5th. He was just one behind Rodgers. Rodgers was one behind Garoppolo. The 49ers led the league with rushing touchdowns, which was also kind of surprising there. I want to say it was like 23. So that's quite a bit there. They averaged 49ers averaged about 140-ish, not quite 150 yards per game on the ground in the regular season. That was second only to Baltimore, which averaged about 206 yards on the ground. But of course, when you have Lamar Jackson, that is how that can happen there. So what I'm laying all this out for is Mahomes is really the only guy that feels like he would have the yardage supporting a multi-touchdown game. The other guys all could have multiple touchdown games because we've seen it from them. I mean, you had 2 league leaders or 2 guys up near in the top 10 for touchdown passes this season, and then you had a guy averaging 2.1 per game in Tannehill. So it's just that where's the yardage supporting it? So it's nice when they get into the red zone, but what are we going to see? And then if we look back to the first week at the play, or the Lamar Jackson week, where he had 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, and they still lost. And none of that really seemed to come in garbage time. So weird stuff can happen here. Didn't talk a ton about the. Ooh,
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right, I think it's fixed.
Awesome. There we go.
Nice.
See, Josh, we can survive without you. Barely. Barely. But anyway, so I was just trying to lay a baseline out here for the quarterbacks, in that it's the yardage, just for this being a passing league, and it has been for the better part of almost 10 years now, especially the last 5, and more importantly, the last 3, with rules changes and teams figuring out that the passing has a better scoring equity than 3 yards in a cloud of field turf recycled tires does. But it's one of those things that when you see that 3 of the 4 teams in the playoffs right now would be considered run first teams, it's just kind of wild how it works. It probably also helps that 2 of those teams have the better defenses that are remaining. But
yeah, and I've gotten up big. I mean, a small sample size, I think, and I gotta try not to read too much into it. The teams that I wonder, if it's fairly common situation when you're going to win big, but you're also going to have some rushing. There's probably pretty strong correlation between that and how well you've been rushing the football. So because you're going to be up running the ball, right? But yeah, definitely an extreme example in this one. So what are you? I know you said it earlier, but what are you doing with Derrick Henry on this on this slate? You're underweight or just?
I'm overweight.
I'm overweight.
Well, this is the hilarious thing. So let's have a joke at my expense, because it's always more fun. I went into the first. Yeah, this is their 3rd game in the playoffs. I went into their first one, and the way I had set up my stuff, I didn't realize I didn't have any Derrick Henry on my Sunday to Monday slates when they played on that for Saturday. Yeah, which was just an oversight. Now I've changed how I do things now, and I actually went through and checked to make sure I had all of the players I wanted. It's a little easier with 2 games, but I had a bunch of other stuff going on, and it was a little frustrating. Last week I ended up with my Sunday or my Saturday Sunday slates because I was traveling and I couldn't get good Wi-Fi. I had to roll with my placeholder lineup. I had 100% Kittle. What could have been if I had 100% Kelsey? I don't know. That would have been a very nice day. But point being is you need to take steps to not do foolish mistakes like that. And I tend to, with us being on air all the time and having a regular job and all this stuff, I've become a comedy of errors when it comes to foolishness. So placeholder lineups are important, that they're actually viable lineups. and plans to get yourself out of once you've painted yourself in a corner, very, very important. So I've been learning that lesson over the last 3 weeks multiple times.
Nice.
All right. Sorry. So let me get over to, I just want to enter a couple more contests here. Now now I'm moving to Showdown Slate here.
Yeah, let's roll with some Showdown Slate talk here, because definitely going to be throwing some lineups in. You got your article out. We got the Awesemo tools. I'm going to pull them up here. Maybe we can reference a few of them.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So let's while I'm setting lineups, for the first one, I can speak to the analytics on the second game, since I wrote that article, and I'll drop that article into chat, but it's also on our homepage here. But in these this early set of games here, I'm now going to build my lineups. I'm going to do, I don't know, probably 60 or 70 lineups here. I have to come up with my main lineup. On a fun note, Raymond is in my shell lineup right now. It's 5 Tennessee guys and Mahomes as the captain. So
it's not a bad bring back in a large CPP.
We'll see. That's not, but I'm playing a lot of 3-mans in this one. So that tends to be something I enjoy doing. I think and plus I'm still on all the sites. I'm still where I can live and play games where I don't have the Apex Predators in them. So I can play in the $5 and below on DK and FanDuel. So that is always very important to me. But let's see here. So I really, really, really want Mahomes in my main lineup. No surprise there. I think he's the best play on the slate. I really, really, really want Derrick Henry. Okay, that's nice. Now I'm left with $4,500 per guy. I could, if I felt strongly about someone, maybe I could go with a cheaper captain than Mahomes. So what if I said, how are you feeling about Damian Williams today?
Getting a lot, just trusting the projections there. I mean, his recent performance has been buoyed, I think, a little bit by the touchdowns, but he also is I like putting him in my home stacks. It's a little bit of a differentiation. You're not going to catch a ton of people off by surprise on a 2-game slate with that one, but he's getting a lot of work in the passing game. LaShawn McCoy is inactive. He's the bell cow here. And so there are definite scenarios where I think you can just have some full Chiefs passing stacks with Williams in there, and just kind of, if the Chiefs do run away with this, you're going to see some, or you could just go with Mahomes and Williams and kind of hope that maybe his 6 to 7 target replication comes through and he's able to score in a couple of these, and you get if you have Mahomes and Williams and maybe only one other Kansas City pass catcher, that also might be a fairly unique build. But way over the field on Damian Williams. Don't have a hot take, just trusting the projections here.
Where would you land on Kelsey versus Tyreek Hill? Mono. I'm leaning towards Kelsey. It's not because of the 3 touchdowns last week. It's because he has top 10 overall wide receiver type numbers as a tight end.
Yeah, I do. I had some stats here. He ran a lot against Adoree Jackson the last time out. Caught 8 balls when he was matched up against him. So I think Tyreek Hill does have a plus matchup, and at his price point, I'm overweight on Tyreek Hill compared to Travis Kelce. Kelce put in a pretty solid line last time out against these two. He was double covered a lot last week. Still got 10 catches for 12 targets. So I mean, my answer is play both, but. If you're going to build, you can kind of get a little bit creative with your Kansas City stacks. Maybe you go Watkins and Hill and leave Kelce off, or because they're obviously the most common build for everyone's going to be Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So,
all right. So here's my main lineup for my 3-mans and stuff. We liked it. The audience enjoyed seeing this when I talked about it. Now again, there's a million ways you can pivot off this. Normally, I don't like to give out a full lineup, but this is weird enough that a lot of you are going to say, I can't believe you're doing that. And then I encourage you to build your own lineup, and you're going to end up on some of these same players. So I have Mahomes as the captain. The argument there is I think he's the best player. I think he has the best chance to be involved in the most touchdowns, and I think he is game script proof. But you don't have to fade him by not playing him. If you don't want to put him in as your captain, put him in the flex. And this is something Ben does a better job of explaining. But you're still, if you go and look at it, a lot of times when you play these head-to-heads and 3-mans, if you look at who their captain is, who your captain is, if you each have different ones, but you both have them, the other guy in your flex spot, so they're not getting the 0.5 multiplier on it. A lot of times it's a lot closer of a result than you would think. So I just don't think not playing someone that's really, really good is scary. Choosing to put them in the main body of your lineup rather than the captain spot may be a way to go. Now, the key guys that we like, Henry, Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill, Damian Williams, they're all very expensive. If you end up with any of them in your captain spots, you're only going to be able to have 2 of those guys in your flex spots. So I was playing around trying to get a lesser type player up there where I could get some savings. There's nobody I really like short of potentially Adam Humphries. So what I felt like my main lineup is going to be Mahomes as the captain, Henry, Kelsey, Raymond, the Titans defense, and the Humphries. Now, you're going to end up with a bunch of Tennessee guys because they're cheaper. So that's not really what I want. So now I want to say, all right, what if I went with my main lineup as Humphries here, because he's really cheap. He's $800. Pardon me. He's what's the multiplier? He's $1,200 if you put him in the captain spot. Now I like playing on DK because I like that. I like the salary multiplier there because it makes you have more decisions. But if I put him as my captain, all of a sudden now I could play Mahomes, Henry, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, and Tajay Sharp. So which lineup was more terrifying? I think this one is. As
Tajay Sharp. I'm worried that like Tajay Sharp's not getting a lot of run to begin with, and then Adam Humphries coming back. It's not.
But it's the other
ideal.
4 guys that are important to me with Mahomes, Henry, Kelsey, and Hill. I can only get 3 of them if I don't do it this way.
Right.
What do you do? I've got 2,400. If you don't like Sharp, would it be a Dion Lewis? Would it be a Ferkser?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, like we talked about Dion Lewis with that game script, if you're loading up with the Chiefs, it's not the worst bring back option. Or Adam Humphries gets injured and Tajay Sharp kind of takes over some of those slot duties. But I don't know. I mean, like obviously anything can win in these.
Basically it's great salaries because these are tough choices. They don't always seem to be this tough. Now I don't have a kicker in there, but I'm going to go this route: 4 studs, 2 duds. If we were in Mexico, you would tell me Vaya con Dios, Emac, but we're not. What would we say in Quebec?
I don't know.
I thought you had to know French.
I wasn't paying attention in French class.
I thought you had to know French all through school.
Bon journée. Yeah, and I was a D student.
All I know is Frere Jacques, and that had nothing to do with anything else. All right.
No Tajay Sharp at that price. I just saw that price. Get him out of your lineup. That's awful.
I have 2,400 left. Who do I put in? Who do you like below him?
Take the savings and take Humphries. And then
I already have Humphries as my captain.
Oh, you got Humphries as your captain?
Yes.
That's probably suboptimal to have both those guys in the same lineup because
I'm sure it is.
They're going to be splitting time, if anything.
So there we go. There you go. Hopefully you lined up and got some of my 3-man action here.
There you go. You can always change it. You still got 20 minutes. What about this other game? Because there's some pretty big showdown slates here. We got an $88,000 Sunday night showdown. I'll just go over some of the top value plays and what we're looking at for your showdown slate lineups here. So captain ownership wise, this is the night game. Oh, we don't have this game up yet. That's why. So I'm guessing these the night game will not be out until after this one locks, unfortunately. So we will not have that information for you yet for a couple of hours. I am guessing that it's going to be pretty spread out at the top. Probably George Kittle taking the vast majority of the showdown slate captain spots, and Devontae Adams seems like a lot overpriced, whereas Kittle is about 1,500 less. So I would probably be erring towards that side, but you might want to get a little bit creative. I'm guessing that Manny Sanders might come in a little bit under owned. He's got a decent matchup. I don't know. So there's not a lot of great bargains on this slate here. Richie, you could go for the other double dip with Richie James Jr. and the San Fran D. It's pretty gross. I'm not advocating for that. Matt Breida is probably the best play at sub 2K ownership. He's a pretty good bargain, I think, at that price point. So I'm sure he will come up a lot in crunches. It's kind of the same price points, and of course, we haven't even mentioned Alan Lazard yet. He was getting 8, 9 targets for a couple of weeks there, running the second most routes on the team, not far behind Devontae Adams. And that ankle injury caused him to miss a bit of last game and to be kind of questionable all week. So I'm a little bit worried about putting him in there, but doesn't carry an injury designation heading in to tonight's game. He's a great bargain and clearly took hold of the second wide receiver duties down the stretch for the Packers, whereas the kind of poo-poo platter of Jake Kumerow, Geronimo Allison, and Valdez Scantling just never really stepped up this year and didn't do anything. So kind of like him, depending on his ownership, but I'm sure he comes in at great value.
I'm looking at this, the first game showdown. It looks like Adam Humphries is popping dramatically.
Yeah, he's our number one value play.
Yep. The guy that I'm at 10% Kelsey, no Jonnu Smith. That's kind of wild. But their prices are so heavy. 73% Mahomes, Tannehill, I'm getting 43%. If I look at captains, I set everybody at 10%. This is usually how I influence my plays to be a little more spread out amongst things. And then what I'll do is I'll come in and I save 20% of my lineups to create captains or pairings that I want specifically here. So yikes. It's a little tougher than one would have thought, huh?
It is. It's tough, yeah.
Do a little Damian Williams with Mahomes.
So you're putting all four of those guys in.
All four of which guys?
The Chiefs' top targets.
Yes. Yep. Mahomes coming in nicely there. This looks like a good little mix here. You know what that means? I'm going to lose, because when you feel confident in your lineups, that means they're probably not a good tournament mix. A little Kelsey as captain there, because I think he's being overlooked. And then who's my last guy? Do a little Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, because got to join the masses somewhere. All right, there we are. Got that all set. See my defenses. I ended up with just 20% of the defenses combined in this game. The kickers, I ended up with 80%. That's where I'm going with my savings.
Makes sense. Those are always great value plays for sure. The defenses, I mean, they're probably going to come in under owned. I'm guessing that they will have pretty low ownership relative to their projection points. Should we wrap it all up here? Give people 10 minutes to set their lineups?
I think we're good.
Awesome.
So let's see. So reminder, we've got all sorts of shows tomorrow. It's a huge NBA day. So we'll start off tonight. We'll be, of course, recording the sorry, my wife's texting me from the other room. We'll be recording the Early Bird podcast this evening, and then that'll lay that out there tonight. Then we're going to go right into the DFS strategy show at 9:30 tomorrow morning. There are NBA games going at 2. There's 2, a 3, 2:30, a 3. There are 6 going off at 5, and then at 7:30 there's a 5-game slate. So we're going to have 2 NBA live before locks. We'll have the deeper dive, and we'll have the NBA DFS strategy. So we got you covered. Is there hockey tomorrow? I don't.
Oh, let me double check that.
I thought they might have had a light day, but
NHL scores.
They have 3 games today, I know, and they'll start at 5. So we've already got some content.
Tomorrow's just a 2-gamer for MLK Day, and so we'll just have maybe Jake Harry will get on for a show, and then that NBA slate's going to be crazy. So extra coverage for everyone, and make sure to tune in for that. We're going to have I think you mentioned it, a morning NBA show because there's going to be 2 different lock times tomorrow, right?
Indeed, there is.
Awesome.
All right, we're good. Let the see if the boss man's letting us know here, and we can sign off.
Sounds good. Yeah. Do we go over? We've also got one special giveaway. So if Osmo NFL gets to 5,000 followers before the Super Bowl, we'll have the biggest giveaway ever. So make sure to head on over to Twitter, Osmo NFL, at Osmo NFL. And of course, thanks to our sponsor, Fantasy Draft, the only rig-free fantasy sports site in the industry. DFS player can lose up to 30% of your bankroll. You already said this, but why not say it again? It is it's such a cost savings to go over there and play. So make sure to check it out.
I do like the basketball over there too.
Absolutely. It's all great. All right. Osmo, take us out. Thanks so much for watching, guys.